Hello. Okay, there we go. We had a false start, but I think we're actually live now. Hello.
Hello. And Brandon,
Laura with
you just
Effective
lagged there
Artistry.
a little bit.
All right, welcome to the This Is Not Therapy Hour with Effective Artistry. I am Brandon Tessers. I'm a licensed therapist, but this is not therapy. And with me today, as always, is Cecil. Hello, Cecil. Cecil is in our offices. I obviously am not. I'm in a different location today, and we tested this setup and everything. Of course, this has happened before, and everything worked great. And now I'm worried that going live somehow changes the broadband demands, and I'm going to be lagging again. So if anything like that happens, let me know, and we'll do our best.
Yeah.
So this hour is just a time for us all to chat. With
There we go.
whoever here us today. It's like, what? Am I lagging again?
It's good. It's caught up, so you're good.
Okay. Well, if it keeps being a problem, I wonder if there's something I can do, is maybe turning off my video or something. We tested it even yesterday and earlier today, but I think
it goes.
Anyway, yeah, it's just an open conversation. We always pick a theme every week. The theme this week is setting intentions. We're following up from last week when we were talking about plans, and we separated planning into two categories. One being making plans with other people, and one to-do list, right? Which we use the language setting intentions to talk about. And we ended up talking a lot more last week about the first, about making plans with other people and communication. So this week we're making space to follow up on that second one, setting intentions, taking things from your to-do list and turning it into a plan, setting it on your calendar, setting an intention of when you're going to do it and how and with whom and etc. But of course, every week we pick a theme just to kind of make it easier for us to solicit questions ahead of time and give people some information to make decisions about, what they're most interested in showing up for. But really, it is just a conversation. So whoever's here, we're going to talk about whatever you want to talk about in chat. If you have questions, comments, anything about anything, throw it out there. It doesn't have to be about this topic. It's just how we start. I feel like I mostly covered it. Hello.
Yeah, I think covered everything.
Say hello to Barbara in chat there. She says hi.
Well, they say hi, so you're assuming a lot.
I'm sorry. That's right. I did assume. I apologize. Yeah, I kind of miss being at the office. I mean, we've only been there. I've only been in there for 3 weeks, and I'm having a great time. I'm with my family. We're visiting a lake. I just realized there's a big cross, crucifix on the wall behind me.
The thing says relaxing
Yeah, I don't know what kind of message that sends, but anyway, so yes, I'm working this week, seeing clients and things, but this way everybody else gets to have a little bit of fun, and we're all in a different place and enjoyable. I lagged again, didn't I?
Yeah, it's fine now.
Am I back now?
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
You might need to take more. You might need to take more of a lead this time, Cecil. Anyway, so we'll talk about setting intentions. So just to kind of refresh, because we talked about this last week, but for those who are here, who weren't here or didn't see the VOD of last week, setting intentions is the language we use to kind of distinguish making plans of communicating and coordinating with other people to make plans from making plans as in, I lagged again, didn't I?
It catches up though. It's a little pause and then it catches up.
So. I mean, that's hard for people to watch though. I'm going to see if turning off my camera does anything.
Oh, because that way you'd just be the only one up here and just everyone to stare at me.
I know, and it's sad because I'm so much more handsome than you are, and it's much less aesthetically pleasing.
Yes.
But let's see if it works better with my camera off, then it's worth it.
Yeah. Cool.
So, excuse me. So yeah, so setting intentions is what we talked about. That's the language that we use to distinguish making plans and coordinating with other people from making plans, meaning I am taking something I need to do or want. I froze again, even with my camera off, didn't I?
just for a second, and I spoke too soon. But it's Kitch Squatch. That's who Barbara is. So.
Oh, hello. Okay, I didn't know.
And okay, looks like Brandon froze. Hopefully, it's me who froze and not him.
All right, so I just switched networks. That's why I dropped there for a second to see if this other network would be better, and hopefully it is.
We'll see.
Let's see if I can finish it this time. Setting intentions is the language that we use to distinguish making plans, meaning communicate.
You're good. You're good.
That's me?
No, you're good. You're not lagging.
Okay. Making plans is, setting intentions is the language that we use to distinguish making plans of coordinating with other people versus making plans of taking something that I need to do or want to do or intend to do and planning it out, saying when and how and in what steps and etc. So setting intentions is that personal plan setting, which needs to be handled differently than coordinating and communicating with other people. So that's the focus for today. And there was something I wanted to bring up last time and we ended up getting off on more communication. So I'll say this part this time and then we kind of will get into it, which is that people tend to fundamentally misunderstand the purpose of planning when we're talking about setting intentions. In that people think that it's about making it more likely that you follow through on whatever your intention is, which is true. Doing that, setting an intention and the various ways that you can do that, putting it down into a calendar and setting reminders and things like that, those things do make it less costly to follow through on that intention because you're doing some of the work up front. And so therefore it makes it more likely that you will follow through. But that is not what planning is for. That is something that setting intentions does. It's not what it's for. What it's for is resolving open-ended problems. So if I have an issue, right, and let's keep it real simple with I need to do a piece of homework that's due on Friday, right? And for whatever reason, now is not the time to do it. I'm busy with other things. I don't have access to the resources I need. For whatever reason, now is not the time to do it, but it needs to be done. So if I set no intention other than the intention that I'm going to do it, I want to do it, I should do it, whatever, then my working memory, my awareness is keeping that problem kind of open, right? That don't forget about this thing, that nagging voice in the back of your head, like even if you're doing other things that are busy or even enjoyable or whatever, that you just got that feeling of like, there's something. Because if you drop it out of working memory completely without either arranging for it to be brought back to you from the environment or processing it into long-term memory so that you can retrieve it later. If you don't do one of those two things, then having it exit awareness, working memory, is just forgetting. It's not coming back. And if it's important or if it's urgent to you, whatever the problem is, then the more important it is, the less likely that is to happen. So some amount of space in my working memory is going to be dedicated to, I got to do this piece of homework until I do the homework and then the problem is resolved, right? Setting intention is the only workaround for that I can resolve the problem even though it's future oriented. Whether or not I actually end up doing what I intend to do isn't the issue. It's whether or not I feel comfortable with the intention I'm setting. So if I say, okay, great, let me write this down. I'm going to do this tonight at 7 p.m. and I'm going to set an alarm that reminds me, or I'm going to, you know what, I'll handle that when I'm in study group because, whatever. As soon as I do that, the brain says, okay, good, I can close that and put it away. Either because I have set some external reminder that will come back to me from technology or from other people, or because I've connected it to some schema that I have already processed into long-term memory, which is very easy. I'll do it at study group, right? Even if I haven't set a reminder, I can process that into long-term memory by attaching it to study group and let go of it.
This is kind of like the wrap that ribbon around your finger cliche. It's like,
yeah, because that's
this thing I got to remember. It's like
that's yeah, absolutely. Because that's, again, if it's urgent but I can't do it right now or don't want to do it right now or whatever, then I'm going to hold it in working memory until I either do it or set an intention that I believe will work. Doesn't matter whether or not it actually does. So this is where people get caught up, is because I say, oh, I'm going to do it at 7:00 tonight. And then all day long, I'm dreading, oh God, 7:00, I'm not going to do it. What if I don't do it? What if, I've had clients who say like, oh, I don't like to schedule things because if I schedule it for 7 and now it's 7:03 before I started, I look at it and I go, oh, I missed it. Oh, now I got, instead of just starting. So we talked a little bit about this last week when we were talking about treating these things as tools, not taskmasters, that you're not failing your plan, that a plan and intention is made by a past version of you that by definition had less information and was making a guess about what would happen in the future. And the present version of you knows more about what's happened between now and then, and particularly what's happening in the present, obviously. So if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and you change it. But it's not a failure because the intent was not to control your future. We can't predict the future. The point was to be able to stop thinking about it. If I am worried about, I don't know, an actual thing that I'm worried about, right? Like something that has been on my mind lately is I was working out really well and then things got really busy and did I freeze?
No, you're good.
Oh, you froze on mine.
Really still. I'll just keep moving around so you know.
An actual thing that I've been thinking about lately is that I was doing really well with working out for a while and then things got busy and I've not worked out much for the last several weeks. And so most of the time when I think of it, it's like, okay, now it's not a good time. I'm working or whatever. I can't go work out right now. But in order to be able to let that go, I have to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to do it tonight or I'm going to do it tomorrow. And obviously I've not been following through on those plans more often than not. But in the moment, it lets me shift from, oh God, I'm falling out of shape. This is the worst. What am I doing? Why am I letting it? To, no, it's good. I've got a plan. It doesn't actually matter whether I follow through. Does that make sense? I know I'm repeating it in a lot of different ways, but this is an important thing because people, if you think that it is about predicting and controlling yourself in the future, then you will feel terribly when you set plans because you will fail them. There is no way to 100% follow through because you can't know everything. So you have to be able to understand that and accept that and know what the value of setting intentions is, regardless of whether or not you follow through on it.
I mean, that shift from like using these tools around us as like, support or help and assistance opposed to like guidelines and rules is like probably the biggest struggle I have. It's like, I'm like that. Like if I put something down on the calendar, it's like, okay, cool, there's that. I'm like, it feels like stressful because I'm always thinking about it because I just can't alleviate the stress, not thinking about it. Or because I know that like I'm gonna get there, I'm like, oh no, it's like I'm a little late on that or whatever else. And
yeah,
and like,
yeah, it's a miserable experience. So then every time that you struggle and then somebody comes to you and says, oh, you just got to make a plan, get a calendar, you make a to-do list, et cetera, then it makes it worse because you're just convinced again that this is another piece of advice that everybody else understands and knows how to do except for me. And I'm broken and I'm deficient in some way because I don't get it.
Because all you do is make another to-do list. And you're like, oh, like let me write that on my to-do list that I'm never going to get to.
But see, making a to-do list again, so that we can generally, like when we do executive functioning work, right? Executive functioning coaching, obviously you guys are all here, like we tend to do more of this kind of higher level, abstract, complex stuff because other people do a really great job of doing very simple, like not very simple. I don't mean to denigrate it like that, but doing, curriculum, how to do a good organization system and et cetera, right? But that doesn't mean that we don't do it at all. Offloading is important. And so one thing that we almost always will do at some point with every client when it makes sense for that client is to address two things. One, we can generally call the to-do list. One, we can generally call the calendar. And again, the to-do list, see, this is the same shift, but in slightly different ways. You're thinking about, okay, the point of a to-do list is to make me do the things on the to-do list when it is not. The point of a to-do list is to take the things that are currently in your awareness, taking up space, awareness, attention, energy, time, and put them somewhere that you are confident you can let go of. So a to-do list isn't going to work for you anymore because you now believe rightly, I'm not saying that you're incorrect, for good reason. You now believe that a to-do list isn't going to accomplish that. You won't check it again. You won't do it. So it's a waste of your resources, Cecil, for you to make a to-do list because the brain is still going to hold it all up here and say, yeah, I don't care that I wrote it on a to-do list. If I let it go from here, I'm losing it.
Mhm.
Same thing with the calendar, right? They're just different. To-do lists are about tracking tasks that I don't want to forget what I'm supposed to do or what I wanted to do, right? And this is by far the most common thing. Pretty much every client I've ever had, when I start talking to them about to-do lists, they will say, "Oh, I don't write stuff down because I don't need to. I remember stuff." Because again, people think that it's about, oh, other people aren't capable of remembering things and I am, therefore I don't need to write it down the way that they do. It's not about whether or not you remember it. It's about what it costs you to remember it. I believe every one of my clients when they tell me that they remember things. And of course, we all slip up from time to time, no matter how good you are at it. But that's not the point. It's not, yeah, park your thoughts somewhere else. That's a good way to say it. You take the thought, you put it somewhere, but you have to put it somewhere that you are confident that the brain believes you will revisit. Because only if that's the case will the brain then say, okay, I can let go of this. Otherwise, like with most people who hate doing to-do lists and calendars, it is a waste of resources because you're taking extra time to write all this stuff out, but the brain's holding on to it all anyway. So it doesn't accomplish anything. It just is extra work for nothing. Now, of course, when you start, you have to go through that process. Nobody, well, I guess not nobody. Generally speaking, when you start doing some kind of to-do list or some kind of calendar, your brain is not going to automatically and instantly being like, yes, I can trust this system and I'm letting go of things completely. So you do need to force yourself to do it, even though it doesn't accomplish anything at first, because as long as you get the consistency and do keep revisiting that thing, eventually your brain will start to accept it and let go of things. So using myself as an example, oh, go ahead, Cecil. You have something.
So this, like, I mean, I just like answer the questions because to-do list or things that
Yeah.
we talk about a lot. But what is this? So I know that like when you start something new, anything, it's going to be a little more harder at first. It's like a lot more front end working, and then until it becomes easier and such. So with this, like, how do you balance it between like forcing yourself to doing it and also recognizing that it's still a little bit more work, but it will pay off? Like,
so that's great, because that's exactly what I was about to get into, because it's not a thing that you force yourself to do. I mean, you can, obviously people do it, but it is a very difficult process and a process that is really not very likely to succeed. A lot of times people will talk about this in terms of habits, right? Which we've talked about in the past, that, oh, do the habit for so long, and then it will be automatic. And it's true. It's just really difficult to do it that way. How it really works, and this is why we do coaching and why we do therapy and why we do groups and why we turn to people, family and friends around us, and how it really works is through connection. Because at first, you're only doing it because I'm telling you to do it. Right now, this conversation, if anybody walks away from this and does a to-do list or a calendar, is because for whatever reason, they trust what I'm saying. Maybe it's because they trust me. Maybe it's because it sounds good, whatever. But they say, okay, this feels like a waste of my time, but I believe the other person telling me this. So Cecil, if we were to work on you starting a to-do list or calendar, and we have, and you have one, but at first you're doing it for me. You're doing it because I'm going to check in. Because when I say, hey, how's it going? Even though I'm not going to be like, how dare you not follow up? Because it's that social data piece, right? That, okay, They want me to do it, so I'm going to do it. I'm doing it for that reason. But as I do it, and as I consistently check back in again and again and again, then my brain starts to trust that it doesn't matter if it's for you or for anything else. My brain starts to say, okay, yeah, I am going to use this, so I can actually let this stuff go. I was this person for the vast majority of my life, not doing to-do lists, not doing calendars. Even still, I really struggle with to-do lists, but I'm pretty good with calendars these days. Because when I started as a therapist, when I first had one client, it was really easy to remember who I had when. And then when I had 3 and 4 and whatever, I was still just remembering it all, which is not great. And I only had to mess it up once or twice. And I did it, for a long time that way. But messing up once is a miserable experience, to go back to somebody and be like, I am so sorry, I double booked you, because I'm in a position of responsibility and you're paying me and you're struggling and you want my help and I want to help you. And now I've messed that process up. So after a couple of times of that happening, I was like, okay, I'm actually going to start a calendar. And I started using it. And yeah, at first, for a long time, didn't matter. I could still answer questions off the top of my head who I see when. Now at this point, that was 6 years ago. At this point, I can't, when I'm in a session at 3 o'clock, I can't tell you who I'm going to see at 4 o'clock. My brain has no knowledge of who I'm seeing when, because I know it's in the calendar and I know I will see it. So I'm not going to waste any space up here on that. And in fact, now that we're Effective Artistry, as opposed to where I was before this, we have an Acuity calendar where clients can schedule themselves. They log in and see my schedule and just pick a slot. And really, I mean, at this point, one of the things that we have to do is every Monday morning, Cecil gives me a list of clients who haven't scheduled so that I can reach out and prompt, because my clients struggle with executive functioning, right? But if Cecil didn't go through and say, prompt this person, this person, this person, this person, I would have no idea who I was supposed to see or not supposed to see. So yeah, you don't do it for yourself at first. I mean, you can. It's hard. I did it on my own, but that was my 70,000th attempt to get myself to use a calendar. And really, even then, it was only because finally my ability to track my schedule up here was not keeping up with the challenge.
Which is like not, I mean, a lot of us are in that similar situation, or have found ourselves in this similar situation. And that's like why we do these things, is that we went through that and struggled with it. So we want to help other people not struggle with that.
Well, yeah,
it's just like, does offload to me. And I do the same thing for Brandon. Like we
offload to each other.
Yeah, and we have different ways of doing that, and we find what way works best. And a lot of time it is just with each other.
Good question.
Okay, so yeah.
Why don't you put that one up on the screen?
This is.
And yes, Atrox, Cecil just said it, but yes, I've offloaded a lot to Cecil, and he's offloaded a lot to me, because that's what happens in every relationship in your life. There's a phenomenon we call transactional memory, where we store our memories in other people. And that's like a little bit of a dramatic way to put it, that we store our memories in other people. But yeah, there's a reason that in long-term romantic couples, life partners, whatever, right, that there are many things that one person handles and the other person doesn't know anything about. Yeah, it's a relationship. Exactly. That's what relationships are. And frankly, to get a little poetic before getting into the specific practical question, to me, I think of this as why we talk about, as humans, why artists and poets and just generally we talk about love being the most powerful force in the world. Because the only way for an individual to change is through relationship with another person. And of course, calling that love and whatever, it's reductive or poetic, or reductive or poetic or whatever. But yeah, I only change because other people help me change, whether they're doing it intentionally or not. If you put someone in isolation, they don't adapt, they don't change. In fact, their brain literally gets damaged. So that's kind of in my head when people say love is the most powerful force in the world. It's not like a hopeful or optimistic, or a woo-woo thing. It's the thing that can change people more than anything else is connection and relationship with other people. That's why we do therapy. That's why we do coaching. That's why we do this. We have a relationship. Atrox and Kitschquatch, you guys are here. I mean, Kitschquatch, I think, has been here every week. Atrox, you're here most of the time. We have a relationship, even though I don't know anything about it, either one of you, and that leads into parasocial stuff. Anyway, back to the specific question.
Back to this one.
I forget to look at my list calendar. I even forget where I put it. So what do I do? So that right there that we were just saying is the like general answer to that. You get somebody else to help you with this. As with most things, almost every, I don't want to like generalize, many questions. Yeah, I like that. Love isn't romantic, isn't just romantic attraction. I mean, honestly, when I die, my epitaph could be just that second sentence there. It's a failing of the English language that we lump all kinds of things together. Look at us talking about intentions versus plans and stuff. I spent an hour this morning, more than an hour probably, just defining terms very explicitly. Like, what does responsibility mean? What does obligation mean? What does opportunity mean? Anyway, Yeah. So again, as with all executive functioning things, this is not a matter of getting better at forcing yourself to do a thing that you have not been doing. This is about constructing your life differently so that the things that you are trying to do become things that you do, right? That are easy to do, that you want to do, etc. So I'll give you some real practical stuff in here in a second, but the first and best is to find somebody else to help you with this, to understand everything that we just talked about, which is that it will be a waste of your resources at first, except it won't be a waste because it affects the way the other person perceives you, which is why you're going to be willing, your brain is going to be willing to prioritize that data.
So instead of saying waste, you say it's going to be an investment.
Sure, as long as you keep going. But that's kind of, again, off a little bit. But neurodivergent people have a tendency to be, until I have a perfect plan, I'm not going to go, right? Like until I have designed, until I know exactly what career I want, I'm not going to start applying for jobs. Until I know if this job is one that I want, I'm not going to send in my resume. Until I know exactly what I want to study, I'm not going to go to college, because we hate the idea generally of, I'm going to start down a path, spend a bunch of resources on it, and then be like, oh, nope, never mind, I'm doing a different thing, because we feel as though those are wasted when they're absolutely not. I had 6 majors in undergrad and ended up with an acting degree, which obviously is not the bulk of what my career is.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't do what I do currently as well as I do it if I hadn't done every single one of those things. I don't remember what episode Aatrox it was, but yes, we have talked about that. So number 1 is get somebody else to work with you. But yes, number 2 is put those things in places that you are going anyway, or construct them so that they force themselves in on your consciousness. So here we'll rattle off some, this is my thing. We talk deep philosophy, and then it's easy to rattle off a bunch of options, right?
Yeah.
So here are some common and specific ones, is things like, the Post-it notes on the bathroom mirror, or Post-it notes on your bedroom door at night when you go to bed, that you put a Post-it note on your doorknob so that in the morning when you go to open the door, you have to touch it, or a rubber band around the doorknob, or like Cecil was saying, actually the ribbon around the finger, or rubber band around the wrist, things like that. One of my favorites, because people tend to do this a lot anyway, so I like to lean into this, is people who have the chair in the room and the bed in the room, where when it's bedtime, you move all your clothes and stuff from the bed to the chair to go to bed. And then when you wake up in the morning, you move all the stuff from the chair back to the bed, and it never gets put away. It just moves from one to the next. Same kind of thing with reminders, that when you are, throughout the day or whatever, stuff that you want to remember to do at night, you write reminders and put it on your pillow so that when you go to bed at night, you see that and deal with it, right? But then if you're not going to do it, or if you have things that you're, okay, I got to remember to do this thing in the morning, you take it as you're getting ready to get into bed, you take it and put it on the door or by the bathroom sink, even on the faucet, so that in the morning you see it. And then once you're done with that, you put it back on the pillow so that you're forced to keep coming into contact with it. Obviously, my personal favorite, and the one that I use, is my smartphone. And we've talked a little bit about specific things to do with that in the past, but best recommendation is, first of all, remember, like with everything, look at the types of data that your brain already prioritizes. Try to be categorical about it. Some of that can be done through the sense that's used. Don't advocate excessive tattooing like Immerman. I mean, I guess it would have to be something. It works. I guess I would say, if you're considering it, as we beat this joke to death. It was a funny joke and now I'm ruining it. But it would have to be something that you need to be, that's constant, and you need to do a lot and keep forgetting about for your entire life. And even then it wouldn't really work, because you'd lose track of it. Unless you have whatever that's called, something amnesia. Which I don't know that that's even, I don't even know if that's real actually. But anyway, so I prioritize auditory data and tactile data and social data and etc. So on my phone, I'll do a whole session with clients sometimes where we go in and we turn off all push notifications for everything, opt out of everything. It should be an opt-in system, and obviously they don't make it that way for a reason. They used to have options for that, and then they removed it, relatively recently. So we just make it our own opt-in system. I turn off every push notification for everything, and then I can go back and turn things on. And the question always is this: is this something, that I want to take my attention when I'm not thinking about it? So when I'm doing other things, there are things on my phone, the calendar, for example, text messages, certain, email accounts and whatever, that, yeah, I want it to yell at me when I'm not thinking about it. In other words, when I'm being a little more hyperbolic, I say, do I want to think about this thing when I don't want to think about this thing? And if the answer to that is yes, then I turn the notification back on. Because the other way is, if I turn off my notification for text messages, well, then I have to remember to check it. And Cecil will tell you right now how stressful that is. It's actually much, much worse. I know stress, these things get overwhelming and it's a lot. And so you're like, never mind, I'm turning it off. But it's actually worse because then it requires vigilance, because then every moment of the day, some little part of you is like, oh, how long has it been since I checked my text messages? I should check my text messages. People are probably annoyed at me because I haven't checked my text. Instead of letting it yell at you.
You personal experience is terrible. My friends are wonderful, great, and very understanding people. Let's just say that much.
Well, but see, that's the thing. It's not about the friends. It's about your vigilance. It's about you having to think, because I know, let me put it this way. If you had a baby and that baby wasn't capable of crying for whatever reason, right? That would be so much more difficult and exhausting, because you couldn't rely on the idea that I don't have to think about the baby all the time, all day long, because if the baby needs something while it's asleep, it will wake up and cry and I'll know. But if you don't have that, then I need to be checking in on that baby every 10 seconds, because who knows whether it's awake or not, right?
Or you find a different way that the baby's already indicating those things and you lean into it.
Well, yes,
but this bringing it back.
This is a hypothetical scenario, but you are right. In practical
some babies
terms,
don't cry and stuff.
I'm sure that's probably true. I'm sure that's probably true. But we're just illustrating a point. But yeah, you're right. If you were actually raising a baby like that, in other words, yeah, because exactly what just happened right there, Cecil. When I was talking about texting, what did you immediately think about? Was not the texts, was what?
The amount of stress. No.
Well, that, but stress about what? What were you stressing about? Not the texts, not whether you've seen every text or responded to every text. What is the stress about?
Oh, definitely on the spot. The stress about not being able to be on top of it, forgetting about it.
Yeah, but why does it matter whether you forget about it or not?
Because I know that I have forgotten about it.
Right, what did you say makes it easier for you to not stress about the texts?
I mean, either
Kid Scratch or Aatrox.
I think it froze a little bit, Brendan.
Oh, I lost you there for a second. Yeah. Sorry, say that again. What did you say?
I said the exact answer that you needed, so no. Having understanding friends who get it, but
exactly. Having understand. So why does that make it easier? Because you're not actually stressed about the text. You don't give a crap about the text. What you're worried about is how your friends are feeling, how they are perceiving you, and how your actions are affecting them. So if your friend, and we have had this conversation, if I tell you that it's okay that when I text you, I am texting you because it's something that is not urgent and needs to be responded to or even seen, then in fact, I might even feel better about the fact that you have your notifications off. Like I always tell my clients, text me at 3 a.m. if you want, because my notifications are off. That frees me up to reach out whenever the hell I want to reach out, because I'm not infringing on your whatever else you might potentially be doing, because we don't care about that. But that's a little bit of a side note. Goals and markers. Maybe we should do one on the Goodman effect.
So let's get back to this. So because I've struggled a lot with this specific question of Kid Squatches of somebody 88 makes me forget to look at my calendar or list, and so if I forget where I put it, what do? I know we talked about using your phone and stuff, but how, because if it was so easy, we've done it by now. But taking a step back, how do we even start to recognize what we already do and lean into that? hopefully that's not too like back into it.
No, that's a great question and a difficult one. And it is a general one because we're back at observation, right? What we have to look at is whatever it is that we're doing that we already notice, we know about. Whatever it is that we're already doing that we don't notice, by definition means that for whatever reason, our brain has not prioritized bringing that data into awareness. Otherwise, we'd already know about it. So the only way to shift that is to be given some reason to shift that. And again, we're back to somebody else.
Okay.
Somebody else needs to be the person that talks to you and says, hey, if Cecil, as overwhelming as texts are for you, if instead of your friends being understanding and lovely and whatever, if all of your friends were like, what the hell, are you mad at me? If you were getting texts from people every day and calls every day, and then people in your face every day being like, Cecil, what's wrong? What did I do? Are you mad at me? I feel terrible, right? Because what you would most be bothered by is your friends feeling bad, being a burden to them, right?
Yeah.
If that was happening, you would fucking, I've been so good about not
Have
swearing
you?
on
Have
stream.
you though?
That's
Have
the
you?
first time I've dropped the F-bomb on the stream. I'm saying you would check your texts, and it wouldn't be easier or less overwhelming, but you would get it done because it would be more important to you, and your brain would prioritize it because what you care about is how your friends experience. So yeah, just call in a case of emergency. That's exactly what we do. I have 17 different ways to get a hold. Uh-oh.
No, you're good. You're good.
I said we have 17 different ways that I can get a hold of Cecil if I need them, and I use them all. And we've explicitly discussed which things go in which way, on which level of urgency, and yeah, if I really need. So, yeah, you need somebody else. That is the point of friendship, coaching, love. As we were talking about earlier, whatever you want to call it. We only change because other people make it clear to us that we need to, or the environment shifts in such a way that what we've been doing no longer works, or a new problem has arisen, and then we can
never relax.
But exactly right, because it's not about me. Having multiple modes to get a hold of Cecil isn't about me because, what if I need you? It's about Cecil because Cecil doesn't have to worry all day long about whether I need something from him, because he knows that I will come to him if I need something from him. That is the best thing you can do for anybody in any relationship. Obviously, the specifics change, but if you can give that other person, this is what safety is, give that other person a sense of confidence that no matter what I do, you will communicate with me about it. Because I will do things that hurt your feelings sometimes, not intentionally, but it's going to happen. And the more I'm worried that if I accidentally hurt your feelings, it's the end of everything, or that I've ruined your life, the less I'm going to reach out to you, and the more exhausting it is for me to deal with you, because I got to think through everything. But if you make it clear to me, if we discuss it, or in whatever way, it's clear to me that if I make a mistake and bother you, you'll tell me and offer me an opportunity to fix it. Yeah. Communicative. And Cecil is pretty good about that, I think. At least with me, anyway.
I'm very upfront about it. I'm very much like, it's hard for me.
Please leave by 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're not going to observe things differently unless you have a reason to, which means that some change needs to occur in the environment. And yes, usually that's people, but it doesn't have to be. It's just that, if it's not people and it's not you, then it's more not random, but less predictable and not as much under your control. But to finish just real quick what I was saying about this, the phone, opt out of everything, opt into things where you say, I want to think about it when I don't want to think about it. Then what I also have people do is whatever they're using as their calendar, reminder, whatever, go and choose a different notification sound for that thing than you use for anything else. So that even though you still do have 6 or 7 things that notify you, one of them is a different sound, and that sound always means let's go. And for me, it's, again, I always say pick something that will get your attention even if you're asleep. Because then the question when you schedule something is, would I want to wake up for this? If I was napping, would this be important enough to wake up for? And for me, sessions and whatever, yeah, not that I nap, but I would want to wake up for it if I did.
Yeah.
Tactile stuff, smartwatches, visual reminders, etc. Sorry, go ahead, Cecil.
Oh no, that was my question. Was just how to lean into that. And I mean, I always like to use this phrase, but I don't think it's great. It's like the power of like knowing when to quit is, we talk about a lot with stuff is you can't, like, you got to try something. And if it doesn't work, like it doesn't work, then what did work about it? What didn't work about it? What do you think might? And I keep exploring it because, I mean, it's like we go through this a lot with people, like with alarm clocks. And it's like, oh, that sound of alarm clock. Well, I sleep through my phone. It's like, well, here's a visual timer now. Or like, here's a different thing that you never knew was a possibility. And also like changes everything. And,
and of course, it's even way more complicated than it's even way more complicated than we're actually discussing, because even those things, it's not like, oh, I prioritize all auditory data. But what we're looking at is trends and likelihoods and things like that. And just like Cecil says, making guesses. That's the whole point of all this. If you set an intention and the reason that you're doing it, because the brain only does things with reason, right? The reason you're doing it is to control your future self. That will fail. Maybe less frequently than, for some people than for others, but it will fail at least sometimes. And so if you're only doing it for that reason, and then it becomes clear to you that that reason is not consistently true, then you're going to stop doing it. You'll feel like a failure. And that's a categorical binary thing, success or failure, right? So if we eliminate that, if we make it more granular, what does it do? Observation, not did it work or did it not work, which is analysis, but what did happen, which is observation. Then we can take pieces and bits and say, okay, this was something I like, that's something I don't like, and what things do I move forward with, instead of just categorically saying something like, to-do lists don't work for me, calendars don't work for me.
Because I remember in school, we had these like little notebook things, and I like just couldn't stand it. And I do have class and like, fill them out over at the end. Not everybody, but like people like me had to, because not surprisingly, I was not good about ever doing homework at all. And so,
because why? That's a whole different thing. But yeah, me too.
So it's like, and so I do that, and the stress was just writing it out. 'Cause like I had to figure out how to fill this out, and like it wasn't working. But at the same time, like as an adult, I look back on that, I was like, the one thing I really liked about that was the consistency of getting in there and going. I mean, it was a terrible experience, that whole thing. But like, I like the idea of like, oh, if I like go into somewhere and I'm doing something and then I carve the time out for myself to do this, that can be successful. While the rest of it was terrible, there was still something about it that could work with me.
Well, in that particular case, that's a very common accommodation, is, have the teacher sign the assignment notebook at the end of the day to make sure that you've written down every assignment, as though the struggle with doing homework is whether or not you remember that you have homework, which it's almost always not. But the problem is, and you're talking about it, Cecil, there, and I hate that accommodation generally, because people don't use it for what we're talking about, which is just to create consistency, not as a check pass of you did this successfully or you failed at this thing, and so let me step in and put it. Not as in tying it to, oh, if we do it this way, then you will remember and do your homework more, because that's usually not the biggest factor in why you're not doing your homework. So it's not likely to change that. And again, if you have a stated purpose for a thing and it does not accomplish that purpose, you drop it, regardless of whether it generated something else beneficial for you. I've been thinking a lot about education lately, because I don't know, because that's what I do. 11 o'clock last night, we're on vacation. I was like, Susan, let's talk about the nature of intelligence and why and she's like, no. Anyway, the stated purpose of obtaining a college degree, at least in the States, maybe it's different elsewhere, but the stated purpose of getting a college degree is for better employment. That's it. It doesn't mean that there are not other benefits, that you don't get other things out of the process and act of getting a college degree. Of course you do. But the stated purpose is to get a job. So if you go and get a college degree and then it doesn't help you to get a job, you're not very likely, you're not likely to be very happy about the fact that you got a college degree, because that's what you went for. That's what everybody told you to do. So in that particular case, if we focus on the purpose of this accommodation is, like you're saying, Cecil, the good part, to create consistency, so that you're checking in, so that you have oversight, so that someone will catch you if you miss something. Something we've been dealing with a lot at Effective Artistry is not that people miss anything, because everyone here is pretty friggin' brilliant, but that this is exactly on target with what we've been talking about, that instead people enforce that accommodation as a method of control. not as let me help you generate consistency, but as let me make sure that you don't mess up, and let me make sure that you do your homework. And I think that doing this will do your homework. So it's running a gauntlet at the end of every day. It's like, oh God, did I do this? What's the teacher going to say? What's my mom going to say? You know, like it's a miserable experience. But on the flip side, if we don't do anything at all, then it's back to vigilance. No matter how well I'm doing at the things that I care about, if I don't believe that anybody else has the ability to observe what I'm doing and to step in and tell me if I'm making a mistake, then that means at all times, part of my resources have to be dedicated to observing myself for whether or not I'm making a mistake. As soon as I feel safe that somebody else is watching me and that they will tell me if I need to change something, I can let go of that and focus more on what I want to do. Because remember, the brain doesn't distinguish between a thing that is not real, generated by the intelligence, whether it's accurate or not, and something that is actually coming from the physical environment. So every time, which is constant in this scenario, that I'm saying, am I missing something? Am I missing something? Am I missing something? You're also experiencing making that mistake. It is not different. Worrying that you're messing up is the same feeling, obviously not same in the environment, not the same to other people, but to you is the same as messing up. So if you're worrying about that all day long, all you're feeling is that you're messing up. So I had a particular issue with this because I don't like that control kind of, almost carceral kind of viewpoint of you must do this thing and I will step in and make sure that it's done because I don't trust you. So I, had less oversight and more trust and more flexibility, but I went too far in the other direction where it was like, yeah, I don't know, if you're messing up, how would I know, which obviously, again, is not true, but it's about what is communicated to people and what they believe and what they feel. Nobody wants to do anything on their own because you can't really do very much on your own. Yeah. That's fundamentally what's the struggle with a lot of these EF things is how do I fix this problem without talking to anybody, right? Like by just using my phone or my notepad or whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, and by the way, I hate school day planners. Obviously they switch from school to school, but I've seen many of them at this point in my life. And almost universally, it's like you could not design a worse planner for a child to use. Yeah. They're organized terribly. Anyway, don't use school day planners. Get your kid a better planner.
Or help them if they have to use those planners, help them with it because...
No, don't use it at all. If the school is telling you to, tell the school no. No, thank you.
Burn it.
No, honestly, look, my mentor, Andy Mahoney, would always say that the brain processes information on a grid, which, obviously, again, a little bit overly simplistic, but what it means is that the more that we have an organizational system, like we were talking about earlier, the larger your schema in long-term memory, the easier it is to attach a new piece of information to that schema as opposed to having to build a whole new schema from scratch, right? Cecil knows a lot about mermaids, for example. So if I am trying to describe something that I want to describe in a specific way and evoke a specific reaction from him, I can relate it to that schema. I can say something like, oh man, kid was in the pool all day, he's a mermaid, right? Which attaches to, ooh, mermaids live in the water and blah, 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 blah. Instead of, if he knows nothing about mermaids, it's like that information means nothing to me and therefore I'm not going to retain it. So grids are good, yes, but really this is the point of an organizational system, again, is not to have everything neat, although that's good. It's to make it easier to find things. If I have 100 things and no organizational system, I either have to remember where each individual thing is, or anytime I need a thing, I need to take resources at that point to search for it. Either way is very inefficient use of my resources, right? But if I have 100 things and I have a system by which I organize those into 10 categories and I know where those categories are, now I can lose track of, now I'm only tracking 10 things, each of the categories, and then I search through each of those things. So that, anyway, grids are good. Go ahead.
This is a little off topic, but Aaron talks a lot about like this kind of idea with art is that like grass is an example. We always think like, oh, grass, like, oh, everyone, here's a piece of paper, draw some grass or tree, and everyone can draw that. But our drawing of what a tree is completely inaccurate for what a tree really is. Like grass is not green. Grass doesn't look like that. It's so many things that are variable, but we can't remember all that. So we just lump it into like, boom, this is what it's like. So if someone says like, oh, it's, that plant's very grass-like, we all know exactly what that looks like without actually knowing it. It's inaccurate, but it is accurate. Allows us to
Actually,
get accurate. It's
so
not a good way to put it, but
we should have Aaron on one time. Aaron is one of our EF coaches. He's also a good friend of mine and Cecil's longtime partner. We should have him on one time. And
it's like a short-time partner. But I don't know. Sorry.
It's been 14 years you guys have been together. Yeah.
I don't know.
2007. I know. I remember it better than you.
That's what you have you, because I can't remember.
Because the first word that Cecil ever said to me was, "I don't think you're supposed to know about me." When he was coming to, anyway, that's another story.
It's a long story.
That was literally the first thing, and he had a giant rainbow mohawk, like literally, that high, and was wearing like Jenko jeans. Anyway, 14 years ago. We should have Aaron on sometime and talk about perception and intelligence and memory, because that's exactly it. We always talk about language is symbolic representation, not just words. It's data compression, and memory operates only through language. That's why the observation piece is so important. The second I give you a new word, they want to meet him. We should tell him that. He'd probably like that. The second I give you a new word and define it, this is why I care so much about defining language, aside from the communication piece, is you will start to notice those things more. And we know this. We have all kinds of studies on, like, if somebody knows 12 different words for 12 different shades of red, then they can correctly identify and remember and match those shades of red. If all you know is the word red, you cannot remember or identify or match those things. It's all happening through language and symbolic representation. So yes, we don't actually draw grass. Grass isn't actually green, but we do say, one of my favorite examples of this is we ask kids all the time, what's your favorite color? And what does that mean? What is a favorite color? Like, it depends on the context. I don't love green more than any other thing, but we just have to have an answer. So we develop an answer for it. And one of the things that's so fun about neurodivergent kids is that they often don't learn in advance that they need to develop these rote answers for things like that. So they'll get questions and be like, a very neurodivergent kid answer is, my favorite color of what? Like, of food, maybe red, I guess, of clothing, like blue. I don't, or I just read this quote last night from John Lennon that I loved. Today's burgundy, tomorrow. Actually, I'm going to grab this quote because I want to say it all. Except I totally don't remember exactly where in this book it is, but I'm going to find it.
I've got to buy time.
Stall for time, Cecil. No, I got it.
Well, this is a little.
Oh, you can. Let's go ahead. You can still.
No, it's waste time. I'm going to hear this. Let's go.
I love this quote. When I was 5 years old, my mother always told me that happiness was the key to life. When I went to school, they asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. I wrote down happy. They told me I didn't understand the assignment, and I told them they didn't understand life. I love that quote. I remember being at a dinner party for not even a friend, an acquaintance who had a crush on my best friend, so that's why I was there at this incredibly wealthy person's house. And he went around the table and asked each of the boys there, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be? And everyone said, lawyer, doctor, whatever. And I said, I just want to be a good husband and a good father. And he said, yeah, but what do you want to be? I was like, a good husband and a good father. And he goes, bah, and he moves on to the my 5-year-old was just asked a question in his preschool class where they were asking each child, what do they want to do? What do they want to, presumably they were asking, what occupation do you want when you're older? But they were saying, what do you want to do? What's a goal that you have for your life? What do you want to do? And so each person's saying lawyer, doctor, whatever, teacher, athlete. And they get to him and they say, Miles, what do you want to do? And he says, a handstand. Because that's what his goal was at the time, because he had just seen Luke Skywalker do a handstand with Yoda on his foot. That's what he wanted to learn. Anyway, different things. Back to the reason I was bringing this up originally is because the best planner generally is, or the one that I recommend the most anyway, generally is one that is in a grid where you have the days of the week across the top and the hours of the day down the side. because it is an organizational system that makes it easier to compress and retain that data, easier to analyze and use. So every time you look at it, you find things easier. Yeah, for attainable goals. It's a very neurodivergent thing. I mean, especially people talk about it more with autistic people, but generally to take things very literally, which I think my personal theory is that correlates with an awareness of possibility. If I'm aware that your statement could mean 15 different things and I have to pick one anyway, I might as well pick the one that it literally means, right? But if I'm aware that your statement of this is great, let's do it again sometime really only means one thing, even though it could mean other things, but I'm only aware of one possibility, then I'm just going to go with that one. It doesn't matter what you literally mean. So
back to the grid system.
If you got to get a planner for kids that are in school or for yourself, because some people love the handwritten planner, get one. There's like a day at a glance or week at a glance planner is the one that I know, but I'm sure there's a million different ones. And I'll say this, if anything's going to get me canceled from the ADHD community, it's this: I hate bullet journals. I hate them so much. They're the worst. I don't know how and why they became a thing that are recommended to people with ADHD, because it is just taking journaling or planning or scheduling or whatever thing you're already struggling with and making it take more of your resources, because it's not pre-made. And of course, that's supposed to be what's nice about it, is the freedom, and you can be artistic and creative, but that takes time and energy. And the stated purpose of my journal, my schedule, or whatever is not to have fun and be creative, but to get information down, store it, and access it later. And I know that it works for some people, and that's great. But I've never actually met any of those people in real life. Every single person I've ever talked to that uses bullet journals was like, yeah, I tried it and it didn't work. It was fun for a while, it didn't work. Wait, now I got to read this comment from my dad.
Yeah, we can put it up there.
Oh, yeah, you can put that up there. I like that.
Oh, did not? Oh, sorry, I clicked on. I was like, sorry.
That's a picture. That's my dad's Facebook profile. That's him on the left and my grandmother on the right there at my wedding, actually, in Chicago. See, now I'm just thought, well, whatever. We got a couple minutes before we got to wrap up. Are there practical questions? If not, I'm going to go off on stories.
No, I mean, I think that to-do list, that term is problematic in itself because everyone thinks the same thing. But something that we talk about a lot is and maybe we don't ever talk about is it's not about making you do things that everyone else does that's supposed to be. It's about realizing what you do, leaning into it to build yourself, to be more successful. It's not about beating yourself up and using these things as controlling mechanisms as much as it is setting yourself up for success. Make things easier on yourself. If you're cooking dinner and you can prep stuff beforehand, then you can make a more extensive dinner because everything's kind of ready for you. It's not because you're lazy. It's not because you're doing things wrong. You're leaning into it. You're going with the flow. You don't row down or you don't just flow down the river on a boat by I don't know, paddling upstream. That's terrible. Oh, I just went.
No, I like it. Look, I'm better with metaphors than you are. That's why we have divided things up, but I like your metaphor.
It's like a hat thought wearing another thought's hat, or another hat's thought. But I can't even say it now, never mind.
It's like a thought wearing another thought's hat.
Yeah.
That's a quote from The Office. And anyway.
Community. There it is.
Oh, community. Yeah, no, and really, whatever. We're being philosophical. I'm at the lake. Why not? The simple way of saying this, and it's true, everything I'm about to say is 100% true, is that the best outcome, both for an individual and for any community that individual is a part of, is for each individual to be able to do exactly what they want in every moment. Now, obviously, that's not practically doable just because our desires could shift and whatever. But the fundamental problem, talk about capitalism, blah, 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 whatever. But the fundamental problem in our society is that most people don't even know how to tell what they want to do. So because that's the way the brain works, this isn't let's join hands and sing hallelujah. That's how the brain works. It is interest driven. Interest is just a construct. It's a word we make up to describe the phenomenon of my brain, for whatever reason, is prioritizing data relating to this subject. I'm more likely to notice it. I'm more likely to store it into awareness and play around with it and find new combinations. So I am good at what I do because I love it. And because, yes, at 1 o'clock in the morning last night while I'm on vacation with my family, I was writing a tirade about what is intelligence and why we look at it the way that we do and whatever. That will never see the light of day because it's just really pretty angry. But there's good stuff in it that I'll use later. Yeah. And
it's always
good.
So it's just like things like this when you talk about this always makes me want to talk about dogs because it's just so relatable in this. And yeah, so just want to throw that out.
I mean, that's the point of community, right? We talked before about offloading, is that Cecil does a lot of things for effective artistry that need to be done. That am I capable of doing? Yeah, absolutely. I can figure out how to run a budget and do invoicing and whatever, but I don't like it. I don't want to do it. So doing it would cost me more than doing whatever else I'm doing with those resources that I enjoy. And I'm not saying that Cecil necessarily super enjoys those things, although I think he enjoys them more. I think you enjoy them more than I do, but I don't know if that's true or not.
It's very true. I mean, Brendan, you do not enjoy it whatsoever.
I don't enjoy, weirdly, as somebody who talks about effective executive functioning all the time, I really don't enjoy having to do systems, unless I made it myself and I know exactly why. Again, another very neurodivergent thing. I need to know why I'm doing what I'm doing, which again, the brain always needs to know. The brain always needs to know what is the purpose of what I'm doing. So yeah, whether or not you enjoy doing invoicing, you know why you're doing it, and that matters to you. And so it feels functional and helpful, and it's enjoyable for that reason.
To find out more about that, you could check out our stream about cost and value. But that is our time for this week at Effective Artistry. Thank you guys again for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kid Squatch and Atrox and Dad, Fritz Tessers. Thank you for being here.
Join us next week at Wednesday at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at EF_artistry. Our website, effectiveartistry.com. And
real quick, just because Atrox just threw this comment out, you really make me wonder if NT is a myth. It is. There's no such thing as a neurotypical person. It's a valid and helpful construct, the idea of it, but it's not a real thing.
I mean, I want to talk about this because it's like Melanie Klein talks about gender being the same way in the idealized feminine and masculinity. This is the same concept. Okay, we can ramble about these things forever. Okay, that's it. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and we will see you guys next week.
Bye, everybody.